Alright, SciFi and SFB Addict here. We're going to bring you another video game of a Starfleet Battles game off of Vassal. So let me just show you here what we've got. We've got a Romulan K5L destroyer, and that is going up against a Gorn light cruiser. Light cruiser plus actually. So these two ships are pretty much equalized in weaponry. The Gorn has a slight advantage in plasmas. It has 2 S-Torp plasma torpedoes, 4 phaser 1s. The Romulan has 2 G-Torp torpedoes and 5 phaser 1s, but it also has a cloaking device. Now this, of course, pretty much illustrates how the ADB BPV system is kind of broken. The Romulan, with a cloaking device, which is about 15% of its BPV, and the B refit that makes it the K5L is coming in at 104 BPV, whereas the Gorn light cruiser is coming in at 108 BPV. The light cruiser is a greater size class ship, size class 3, where the destroyer is a size class 4. Yet the size class 4 destroyer has a stronger number 1 shield than the light cruiser, although the rest of the shielding between the two ships is roughly about the same. The number of internals on the Romulan is about 40 internals, and the number of internals on the Gorn is somewhere around 70, 75-ish maybe. So it is a fair match. I would say that the Gorn actually has a slight advantage, and that has more internals, can take more internal damage, more power when it slows down. But the Romulan has that cloak, so that's a great weapon for getting rid of weapons lock on seeing weapons. And it's got a greater turn mode. So pretty much it's a fair equivalency, slight differences in races, but a good match. Okay, and this is the game as it played out, so we'll be stepping back through the game as it plays. Okay, so when we set this game up, we actually set it up with multiple ships. So we were choosing between a Gorn Plus, Com Plus, and HDD with a G-Torp instead of an S. And on the Romulan side, we had a K5L or a KF5R Plus. That's the same ship but with a single S-Torp. I don't know if that's an official SSD or not, but hey, we put it in as a list. And we had a KF5RB. Again, this one actually has 2 F-Torps, although I got it mislabeled here as an S-Torp. That's actually got 2 G-Torps. And what ended up happening is the Gorn ended up taking the Gorn CL Plus, and the Romulan took the KRL. And we were just setting up the roles for the ships. So I guess we both did something similar, and then we rolled for the ships. And then we set up the rules checklist. So the rules that were in play for this game. were the following. You can just pause the video and read. Okay, so that's the rules that were in play. And we also put in a master rules checklist on the hydrant, I believe. Yeah. So we had this available to consult for weapons fire. Okay, so here we come in. So Romulan comes in 15, Gorn comes in speed 16. This would have been an okay opening speed for the Gorn if there was mid-turn speed changes higher up as they got closer. And the Romulan has 1 defensive electronics, 1 cutting, and the Gorn has 0 and 0. And that is an example of the sequence of play. We decided to basically forgo going through the sequence of play every impulse unless a specific player wanted to do that. And we just started calling speeds. So I'll just zoom through these here. Now we were playing this such that we didn't know what ship each one had until we got to range 14. So here on impulse 8, the Romulan launches an enveloped G-Torp, which pretty much told the opponent what ship he had. Because the other ships were a single S-Torp or 2 F-Torps. So it would be kind of unusual for the single S-Torp to be launched as an enveloped G-Torp when they could have launched it as an enveloped S-Torp. So it pretty much identified the ship. And the Romulan turns away, forcing the Gorn to choose to either give chase through the plasma or to turn away. Of course, the better option here for the Gorn would have been to fire along his phasers long range at the Romulan, and then turned away and ran out the torpedo. But the Gorn didn't do that. As we can see, the Gorn took the hit. Didn't fire at the torpedo at all. So that reduced his shields by about 5 per shield. He had general reinforcement instead of specific reinforcement. That's another mistake the Gorn was doing, is that instead of putting in specific shield reinforcement, he was putting up general. So he had, I believe, 10 general or 8 general, which ended up taking off 10 points off the warhead from 40 down to 30. And then it was 30 divided by 6 shields, 5 points per shield. And then he had possibly some more specific reinforcement on a single shield. I can't remember. As you can see, the Romulan is turning around to bring the other side plasma torpedo to bear. The Gorn is just continuing to give chase. And here we've got the updated shielding for the Gorn. Okay, so we got into range 14 of one another, and at this point we decided to remove the other ships off the SSD area, as we now know who we were fighting. Romulan circles back, brings the other torp to bear, launches it. Again, it's another enveloped G, so the Romulan came in rolling one torpedo and completing the other one as an enveloper. Okay, so this was turn 2, by the way. So impulse 1, 32. So turn 2, there's the bookkeeping. The let's see, let's bring that up as a unit list, I guess. So trying to zoom the map here. So the Gorn again came in at speed 16. And the Romulan came in speed 0 with 1 ECM, no active fire control. And of course we are beyond range 4, so a plasma can be launched beyond range 4 with no active fire control. So the Gorn, or Romulan launched the plasma, and the Gorn did the same. And then the Romulan launched 2 shuttles, and then 2 more shuttles. And here's the second set of launches from the Romulan. And then the Romulan declares cloak. Now, if the Gorn had battery power here, he might have considered throwing that into ECCM to try and maintain lock-on. And again, the Gorn takes the plasma hit instead of firing at the plasma, or instead of firing at the Romulan and then turning and running away. And it took 6 points of shield damage to every shield, except for 1, which took 5, which was the number 2 shield that took the 5. And then the Romulan cloaks. The plasma is pretty close. Needs to roll a 1 to 2 for a lock-on. The Romulan actually forgot he had 1 defensive ECM, so that would actually have been a roll of a 1 to maintain lock. The ship itself lost lock. And the plasma drops. So at this point, the Gorn decided to shoot shuttles. The Romulan could have shot from the shuttles here at the Gorn at range 3. Would have been the equivalent of firing 4 phaser 1s at 9 to 15. But the shuttles here are actually a deterrent to keep the Gorn from overrunning the Romulan and getting to range 0. Because at range 0, it's range 5 with the cloak, and then they roll the weapons, and if they roll a 1 or 2, it's full damage. 3 or 4, it's half damage, and 5 or 6, it's quarter damage. So you can shoot a ship while it's under cloak, and that's what the shuttles were here to do, was to prevent the Gorn from doing that, so they did not fire. And a shuttle got destroyed. And then the Gorn ran away. So then the shuttles fired and did some damage. So at this point, that is the shielding on the Gorn ship. Pretty much paper-thin shields at this point. Here's where the Gorn should have actually disengaged. Okay, that was the end of turn 2. Turn 3. Gorn ship again comes in speed 16. Very predictable. Romulan came in speed 10. 6 defensive electronics. Raising active fire control when it comes out of cloak, of course, when it does. So, Rom's declaring decloaking. Active fire control is coming up. And the Gorn is trying to turn. Now you notice the Gorn went straight up and then turned. Because of the arcs of the plasma torpedoes, left portion and right portion, the Gorn actually would have been better served side slipping to the right as it was going up. So then it could then turn and do what we call a fishtail. So basically it would have brought that torpedo to bear a little bit faster. And then we got to turn, and here he starts side slipping because he's closing. But he might have been better off slipping away, delaying the closure, then turning, and then slipping back down this way. Again, to make sure his torpedoes come to bear. He did launch one on the first turn, which was actually the one on the left side. So his arming weapon is actually away from him. So he might have been better served by turning this way, turning down, bringing it to bear, and going that way, rather than up and around this way with the torpedo on the wrong side of the ship. And again, the Gorn turns down, and because of the left portion, right portion, the shield bearing for that, or the plasma arc for that, would actually be sorry, range line of sight is not what I'm trying to pull up. I'm at map tools, range line of sight. There we go. So that red line represents the plasma arc. So the Romulan is just on the other side of that, so it doesn't arc. And that's even with the Romulan kind of helping the Gorn by slipping towards the Gorn. If the Romulan had slipped away from the Gorn, he would have been over here in this hex, even more outside of the arc. But anyway. So we go through the sequence of play here. And the Rom uses 2 points of battery and launches his arming torpedo that he launched in the first turn as a fast load, F. And the Gorn also attempts to launch, but then finds out that it's not an arc yet. And there, that letter T was explaining to the Gorn where the arc was. And then we brought up the diagrams here for the plasma arcs. So that's what a right portion is, that's what a left portion is, that's what left side, right side is, and it kind of also illustrates what the right side, left side arcs were for phasers. For some reason the Gorn thought that his right side, left side didn't fire directly forward or directly aft, but only out the number 2 and 3 shield and out the 5 and 6 shield. Okay, so he fired 4 phasers at the plasma. So the Gorn this entire game has been kind of concentrating on mitigating damage instead of putting that power into speed. He's been firing at torpedoes instead of firing at the Romulan. Now he does roll really, really well at the plasma. So it's a 7-point torpedo at this point, down from 20. And he gets hit with 7. And the shield goes down to 6. So at this point, the Gorn has pretty much no shielding. And he had 8 general reinforcement. Now if that 8 had been specific reinforcement and those phasers, that would have been a lot less damage. Oh, actually there was a mistake on the general. He forgot about it, and then the shield went back up to 10. And the Romulan at range 2 fires 5 phaser 1s at a shield that is only 8 points and does 24. 16 internals to the Gorn. So there we had a phaser hit, torpedo hit, and no weapon hits, if I remember correctly. Or possibly, sorry, torpedo hit. Yeah, this is when the Gorn started taking phaser hits. So yeah, there were some phaser hits in here. Romulan drops a T-bomb. Set for size class 3. This was actually a fake T-bomb. And the 3 shuttles fire range 1 at the Gorn's down shield. Because the Gorn is still trying to turn to bring his plasmas to bear. Because he turned here, that was 1, 2, 3. And he had to go 4, so he could have slipped towards, put the shuttles off the number 1, which is what he should have done. But the T-bomb kind of threw him off a moment. I guess he didn't realize it took 2 impulses for that to arm up. Or he could have side-slipped away, at least made the shuttles fire at range 2. But side-slipping towards would have been the better option, because the Romulan at that point has no weapons, no phasers. So 12 internals more to the Gorn. As we can see, we just lost another torpedo. And some more phasers. I think by this point the Gorn was down to like 1 phaser 1. So despite the fact that the Gorn's got a lot more internals, there's very few weapons, so the weapons got stripped off rather quickly. So here the Gorn was still trying to decide how to turn to try and bring that right portion plasma to bear. Turning left would have meant that he had no chance of doing it. Turning right, there's a slight chance. He's got 8 impulses. The question is, can he get that turned around fast enough to launch it? Because at this point, that is the arc of the right portion. Down that row, in around here, out to this row. So it's like a 180 arc that goes down the shield lines. But anyway, of course he was going a little bit faster. It would be a little bit more easier to do that because he moves more often within those 8 impulses he has to launch. But since he's only going 16, that's once every second impulse. So again, here if he had batteries, he may have been able to use them for reserve warp to speed up to try and get that turn happen a little bit faster. Of course, the drawback, of course, is the Gorn's got a really bad turn mode. So faster you are, the more you have to move in order to turn, but the more likely you are to be able to side slip more often and kind of bring it to bear. Of course, the Romulan, with his superior turn mode, is an excellent knife fighter. The Gorn, not so much. So when the Gorn approaches, he has to approach really carefully, or he has to fight slightly farther away. Because when it gets into a turn mode knife fight with an A mode ship, a D mode ship just isn't going to be able to turn as quickly or as fast. And 26th impulse here, that's where the Gorn loses the chance to launch his plasma, which is of course why the Romulan turned down rather than just continuing straight up or side-slipping to the top of the board, because he wanted to stay out of that arc. And at this point, the Gorn declares disengagement, and the mine is revealed as a fake. So if we go back and look at the pattern of the movement, the Gorn essentially just went straight in, turned up, then turned around and left. Whereas the Romulan came in, and basically turned around, went up, and then turned around. So the Gorn is actually doing figure eights. The Romulan is doing figure eights in a really tight turn, whereas the Gorn is doing really wide turns and was having trouble with his arcs. So what should the Gorn have done? Well, as soon as that Romulan launched, the Gorn probably would have been better served firing phasers long range, turning away, and outrunning the plasma. And then circling back to do it again. Slightly longer gameplay. So taking pot shots at range 9 to 15 is not that bad. You got 50% chance of hitting, and you can do, on average, 1 point per phaser. So if he fires 4 phaser 1s, he's going to typically do 4 points of damage. Now, the Romulan's only got 2 batteries, so 2 points of damage per turn kind of thing. It's not the greatest, but it's better than nothing. The advantage of doing that is that you're outrunning a torpedo and he's down a heavy weapon, so the next turn you can speed up and come back in. You're only facing 1 heavy weapon. But that's how that game went. And that was the end of it. Rematch time, next time up. The 2 players here involved have offered to switch ships to see if the type of tactics that the Gorn captain here was employing might be slightly better suited to the Romulan, or perhaps the way he plays, a little bit more defensively, might be more suited to how a Romulan plays. Anyway, that's it for the video. Nice, fast, quick game, and hope you enjoyed it.